and you're all excited, you watch Shark Tank every week like I do. I want to show you what happens when you're an entrepreneur. I can't say it, right? Entrepreneur. I can't say it. That's why I had troubles with it. But let me show you the beginning of it. I'll give you my story, which starts 80 years ago. I am not a public speaker. I'm a retailer. So if I stare at you, it's just because I'm a lousy public speaker. It's not because you have gum chewing or hair or whatever. I'm a lousy public speaker, so keep that in mind. All right, but I will give you my story. I'll try to keep it interesting. I know everybody's here has extra credit, but I'm really excited to tell my story to you guys. I know you're new, you're young, and take with it what you will, and learn from my mistakes. This was a lifetime for me to make them, and if I could have done it again, it would be a lot different. So here we go. Let me show you my commercial first. All right, that's my commercial. Now we're going to take this back to where it all began. And PowerPoint. We're going to
Slideshow.
Home, slideshow.
Slideshow. Play.
From the beginning. We're big? All right. No, I got film.
Is
We'll
this
play
the
YouTube.
audio? Does it come with
No, it's
audio?
YouTube behind it. So somebody's.
Do you want me to shut the audio for
As you
that?
can see, I'm not the most computer illiterate guy, even though I run 10 websites.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, I named this the way it is. My biggest failure. I look back, the necropsy of Party Pro Incorporated, the ultimate party store, by founder and owner me, Barney Kramer. I just wanted to give you my story. My story started about 80 years ago. My grandfather, Joseph Kramer, let me show you what he looks like. Let's see if I can get this working. Joseph Kramer, around 1940, around there, maybe the 30s. Joseph Kramer was a furrier in Brooklyn, New York. It was the 20s, the Great Depression was going on. Nobody was buying fur coats. Honest truth, lousy career during the Depression, right? So he went to my grandmother and said, let's try something new. She said, well, people got to eat, right? So let's open a grocery store. And that's how my retail started for my family. My grandfather opened a grocery store in Brooklyn, New York. That's what it looks like today, that little Adele supermarket deli. He had that for 40 years. The supermarket itself, it was about 1,000 feet big, long, big, I'm bad on my words. But it also was his home. He lived behind the store. Back then, you would have an apartment behind your 1,000-foot store, and your family would live there within the store itself. And they grew up that way for probably 20 or 30 years. My father, Larry Kramer, you'll see him in a little bit, who also led the entrepreneurship in the family. He worked there also as a child growing up, but he didn't want to be in the business anymore. He didn't want to be an entrepreneur. So he decided that he wanted to be an aircraft mechanic. So he went to college, became an aircraft mechanic, and became a teacher. And while he was in school, like it is today, he couldn't make a living. Being a teacher in college could not make him a living back then. The family was getting bigger. My brother Stephen, my oldest brother, my brother Michael, and me, the youngest, Barney, who were being born at the time. They were living in poverty in Jackson Heights, Queens. And my grandfather spoke to him and said, would you like to come to the family business? At that point, they decided that they would move out of the back apartment, double the size of the store, and both families would make a living off this little 1,000-foot store. My father and my grandparents made a beautiful living for many, many years. They had the store for about 40 years. Okay, one day in the middle of 1970-something, my parents were running the store. My mother, Pat, my father, Larry, my grandparents were off that day. Two armed gunmen came into the store. My parents had to basically lay on the floor. They put guns to their heads, and they robbed them. The store itself had started off Brooklyn in the old days. It was basically a pig farm across the street. And over the years, the neighborhood changed. They put up projects, and the neighborhood got rough, and these were two junkies. Well, after that happened, my mother was never the same. My mother never walked back in that store again. We sold the store in 2 weeks. They were done after 40 years. My father, Larry, took off for a while. His father basically retired. He was in his 60s. Many years later, about 5 years later, he would die of heart disease. Back then, they couldn't fix you for heart disease that fast. He died a young man, my grandfather. Well, my father decided he wanted to try something different. So this little store here called S&W Grocery there, that's where it is today. It's a little store, maybe 1,000 feet, in what's called a luncheonette. Does anybody know what a luncheonette is? All right, got one. A luncheonette in New York City, you have a lot of them. It's basically a small Denny's. I don't know how to say it. You have a lunch counter on one side, you all sit there. On the other side, you have some booths, and you have the front. You sell candy, cigarettes, other things like that. Well, that was my first job, actually. That's when my retail career started. At the age of 8 years old, maybe 9, I would be in the front, right in the front, taking money, selling cigarettes, selling candy, soda. At the time, cigarettes were 35 cents a pack. Didn't matter how old you were. You could be 5 years old, I would sell you a pack. It just didn't matter back then. The laws were different. And I really got my training there. I poured coffee, I did other things. You can tell my Brooklyn accent. And other things to do well. Well, my father had a partner at the time. His name was Stanley Greenberg, and they decided that they would go in business together in this. About 6 months, 8 months, 9 months afterwards, partners and wives do not match or mesh. Keep this in mind if you ever become a business with a partner. If the wives are in the business, unless it's a female business and the husbands are in the business, at some point there's going to be drama, and there was drama. My father would take off on a Sunday, they would come with their whole family and have a meatloaf dinner for the family while my parents paid for it. It was all this type of drama where one was taking advantage of the business, one wasn't. So eventually they bought my father out, or he decided to leave, however it was done. They did something called notes. Does anybody know what a note is? All right.
How many students better raise their hand?
What's a note? Accounting students. Okay. Well, here's the real deal on notes. A note is it's a promissory note. Kind of looks like a check. It's pre-printed from the financial institution, or your lawyer, I guess, or accountant would do it, right? Probably accountant would do it. And it's something that, let's say you sell a business for $12,000. A note would be, each one, if you're going to pay it off in a year, each one would be $1,000 plus interest, which is usually 10%. On the first of the month, when the note is due, you take your note, you have a pile of 12, and you deposit it into the bank, and it clears. If it doesn't clear, well, you just broke your deal, and your business can be repossessed. This is something that you don't see today because credit's a lot freer today. But back then, you would buy business partially cash, partially notes. Well, we did the note thing for probably 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, and guess what? The luncheonette went out of business. One day we got a phone call, said, take whatever you want and close it forever. My father never got finished paying off those notes. When you repossess a business, it's wonderful in thought, but a business only has a value if it's a functioning business. If it's not functioning, it's just a piece of property. There's nothing there. And the landlord owns the building, so you never really owned anything. You just had a lease. Is everybody with me on this one? Okay. Okay. Well, I just want to go in order. That's why I make sure I didn't miss anything, so I apologize. All right. No, I'm doing good. Okay. Well, you can tell that's me. Circa 1978, 79. It's a while ago. I think it's almost 40 years ago. Probably 35 years ago. I'm wearing my apron. I got my mustache. This mustache has been on this face for 40 years now. Maybe even longer. Since I was 13, I had it. All right. Milk Plus Supermarket, Brooklyn, New York. My father, Larry, had been in the luncheonette business. Took off another year. Said, you know what? I want to go back in the grocery business. I loved it when I worked for my father. I loved when I had the business. I'm a grocer. That's what I want to do. So Larry went back into the business. He had his son's work for him and his wife. No partner this time. He would never do a partner again. That's gone. Never a partner again. Went to his store in Brooklyn. This is an interesting neighborhood, this neighborhood. It's called Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. It's very Italian, Jewish, a little bit of everything, but Italian Jewish was most of the neighborhood. And the store itself had been run by, I don't know how to say it, but a degenerate gambler. He gambled away the whole inventory. So when we got it, if I didn't tell you this the first time, we used to broker stores through the milk company. So when you went to buy a grocery store, you needed to make the deal. And usually the milk company would make the deal. The milk company knew everything about your store. He knew how much you did, how much you sold. He would get people together. He was a broker. It's a strange thing. But the milk company was where it was at. And he had spoken to the milk company, said, we got this store on Bay Parkway. The owner he's a good guy, but he's a degenerate gambler. He'd run the store into the ground. We sell 1,000 cases of milk. Now we sell 10. You know, take that store at a bargain and run with it. And my father listened. We went to the store, and guess what? He was running the money. The store did great. My father did a couple of things I call my lessons. All right, lesson 1. Here it comes. And these are things I've learned in life after this. Location, location, location. When you open a store, and I see this all the time in Las Vegas, and it upsets me to no end, your location has to be good. It cannot be cheap rent. Cheap rent is the kiss of death sometimes. I've seen people put boba stores, boba, I'm saying everything with a twang, right? My daughter Rachel, by the way. She's in CSN. And I've seen people put boba stores in the slowest, horrible shopping centers next to big lots, and they're never going to make money. I've seen people put trendy gift stores and centers where nobody walks through. They're never going to make money. Sometimes landlords will give you the cheapest space in the world, and you're never going to make money. You can get the most expensive place in the world and still not make money. There's a happy medium here. You can't have the cheapest rent, you can't have the most expensive, but you have to have foot traffic. Without foot traffic, you're dead. Well, this grocery store had been successful many years. The customers were used to having a grocery store in the neighborhood, so they came back. There's also a very busy boulevard, I said, in Brooklyn, and had visibility from the street and quick access. Location, location, location. Lesson number 2, you need inventory to make sales. The store itself was a great store at one time, but it was failing because the owner gambled away all the inventory. There was nothing to sell. My father, the first day he went in there, was we packed out freight and we packed out freight. You know what packing out freight means? Just the way it sounds. Comes in, you put it on the counter. That's packing out freight. And we packed out to